Welcome to the setup manual for the HiPod Lite LX series. This is the manual for HiPod Lite towers which started shipping in April of 2018. Begin by taking the tower out of the case and placing it on the ground. For those HiPod Lite users who purchased before April of 2018, your manual can be found on the page where this manual is posted on the HiPod website. For the latest generation of the HiPod Lite, the leg setup has been greatly simplified. You'll find two black knobs pushing against the core tower in the base of the legs. Once you have adjusted the slats of the legs to be as even or parallel to the ground as possible, tighten the knobs so that they hold the legs in place. This way, nothing will slip while you're operating. The next step is to apply the sandbags, and this is not an option. You must apply the sandbags, but what you fill them with is up to you. We don't recommend sand as that can be a mess. Rocks, bricks, gravel, or something of your discretion is preferable, but you must use the sandbags for safety. The last part of the setup in the base and the legs I want to bring your attention to is the knob on the leg itself. This is an adjustable leg in case you find yourself on uneven ground. There are two head and handle sets available for the HiPod LX series. The first is called Advanced. This is the default option that's included in the list prices. You'll see that we'll go back and forth between the two sets as we go farther into the manual. This is the advanced handle. You'll see it still maintains a 2-rope control option, but the handle itself and the head are both smaller. You can see on the side there's a knob that you can release to open completely or tighten, and this is what the head looks like for the advanced set. The second head and handle set is Pro. This set comes from the larger Pro series as is inferred in the name. With this option you get a larger handle that has more weight, all of the control options to add drag or resistance during a shot, a much larger plate up top, and the option to mount 2 cameras, among other options. This is the set that's used by some of the most preeminent names in sports. We'll flip back and forth between the two during setup, but we're going to start with Advanced. Here is the head for the Advanced tower. On the bottom, you'll see that it has what we call a mounting pedestal that attaches to the top collar on the tubes. Notice, you're going to want to have the hook with the carabiner facing towards you and the ratchet on the left side of this tower. The full advanced handle and head set up on the right hand side of the tower, and you'll see that's different from the Pro later. Take the head and put it into the top of the tubes. Notice that the ratchet is on the left. That gives it enough space to turn and tighten. Now we'll go to the Pro head. It has the same mounting pedestal on the bottom that you attach to the tubes, tighten in the same way with the ratchet. When finished, that round wheel will end up on the left-hand side, but we're showing it here just for scale. The core structure of the new HiPod Lite has been completely redesigned. This is something new. There's a collar about halfway up with a ratchet. If you open that ratchet, you can spin the tower 360, and if you close it, it will lock it in place. Also note the white line which says mount above this line. That is going to be important in the next step. There are two main parts which mount above that white line and below the first tube collar. The first is the LCD bracket, which you can see here. Take the bracket and with the mounting clamp, put it right below the first collar on the tube. You can see the mounting approach as such. On the opposite side of the bracket, there is a ratchet which you can open to adjust the angle of attack the LCD bracket sits at. You can adjust this at any point within the range of motion. Now that the LCD bracket is installed, we're going to attach the handle, starting with Advanced. Here's the Advanced handle again. You'll see it has a large clamp that you can open and shut. There is a silver clasp that will come around from the side. Take that and put it onto the hook that's on the right side near the handle, and then push the lever back to hold the tubes. Once connected, you'll be able to turn the handle freely. Now to the Pro handle, which mounts with the wheel on the left side. Take the clamps of the handle and adjust them like this, close them with the big X on the side, and it will hold in place. Make sure that the entire assembly is above that white line. You can see in these images that if it is mounted lower, you're going to have parts of the handle bump into the collar in the middle of the tower. Mounting above the white line prevents this from happening and is important to take into account during setup. Now I'm going to explain some of the features on the advanced handle. Notice the black knob on the far right. If that knob is completely tightened, it will not allow you to turn the handle up and down. If you open that knob, you can turn the handle at will. When locking that knob, it's good for holding a shot if you want it to look at a fixed position. Now, on the bottom of the handle, you'll see a brass screw that has 2 cords coming out from either side. If that brass screw is turned shut, It will not allow the cords to pull out of the handle. This is good when the unit is in the air and you want to tighten the cords. If you open that screw, you can pull the cords in and out, which you'll need to do when elevating the tubes. On the front of the handle, you'll find an arm, which is where we will mount the remote to later in this manual. So we'll move to connect the head and handle. Now, one rope comes out in one direction, and the other rope will go in the opposite direction. Doesn't really matter which way they go, but they must go in opposite directions from the bottom of the handle. If you pull those ropes out directly from the top, you won't get any control over the head because there's no round shape for the ropes to follow. So just be aware of this. Now that the ropes are connected, the same black knob on the advanced handle controls locked or unlocked function of that handle. Now you can turn the head up top. This is the advanced handle and the advanced head with 2 ropes. And now I'll show you how this works with the Pro head and handle. Again, note how the cords coming down from the head are on the same side as the yellow portion on the HiPod handle. This is where the cords from the handle are going to come out and connect. Now, at the bottom of the HiPod handle where there's a silver pin, you will see 2 nylon cords attached to carabiners. Pull on one, and then from the bottom, connect it to a cord coming from the HiPod head. For the second cord, take it in the opposite direction around the bottom of the HiPod handle. You can see how it connects and then can pull out of the handle in this way. The pulley function is controlled when you turn the wheeled handle, which then turns the wheeled head up top. If you have the cords coming out from the top of the HiPod handle without going around the bottom, it will not function. Now it's time to explain the function of the 2 silver pins or screws on the HiPod handle. For the one on the bottom where the cords are coming out, if you open that screw, you can pull the cords out farther, which is used when the tower is elevating into the air. When you have it at the height you want to pull those cords back down and tighten that pin. That prevents the cords from slipping further and gives you tight control over the motion. For the silver pin that's facing forward, that's the position lock screw. If you have it tightened, you can't move the handle, which allows you to lock off a shot. If you open that pin again, you can move the handle in any direction that you like. Now onto the electronics setup for the units. While the electronics and their connections are identical, their physical applications regarding the head and handle you have will be slightly different. You'll receive this remote mounting bracket pre-attached to your handle. It will allow you to move the handle and the tower in all directions. This stays permanently attached, and you take the remote, shown here, and simply slide it onto this mounting apparatus via the groove in the back. It will click into place. On the side, you'll see a button which says press to release, which allows the remote to be disconnected from this mounting bracket. You'll want to take the remote off and store it separately each time for safety, but leave the mounting bracket on the handle for ease of use. Now we're going to attach the LCD to the bracket. Note the position of the bracket itself, find the screen from your case as shown here, and note that there's a slot in the screen on the back at the very bottom middle. That's what you're going to use to mount the LCD to the bracket directly. Once mounted, take the screw right behind the LCD and attach it firmly to the back of the screen. This will hold it in place, and here's another view of that same motion. One final note regarding the ratchets on the LCD bracket. To change the angle of attack, you first need to open those ratchets and then change how the screen is facing you. Don't just simply push the screen because you'll hurt the track in the back. Open up the ratchet, change the position, and then lock it so that it holds where you like it. The same will apply for the longer extension that is from the base clamp of the LCD bracket up to where the LCD mounting spud is. Make sure to always open and close the ratchets in this way. Now we're going to attach power to the screen. Find the LCD battery, which looks like this. There's Velcro on the back, and just stick it to the back of the screen. There's a power converter cable that goes between the battery and the screen. It looks like this. You're going to plug the round end into the DC port on the screen, and then on the opposite side, you'll connect the USB cord to the battery itself. Look for the higher of the voltage out ports on the battery. You can see the same motion from two different angles in this portion of the video. Again, this is for the screen connection, and then on the opposite side to the USB port on the battery. Once connected to power, your screen will either automatically turn on, or you'll see a red power light, which you'll need to click the button to turn on the screen. Now we're going to start connecting the cables for the unit. This is the set of cables for the LX series. You'll see there are items pre-attached. This is a strain relief and quick release for the camera. It protects the cables under the camera while in use. This is the Lite cable with the yellow tag that controls camera zoom and record functions. Here is the underside of that bottom plate and the hole you're going to use. Again, the electronics are identical, but I'll show you how they mount on each head. This is another view of it. Notice we've taken one of the brass screws from the head and pre-inserted it. The lever will need to be pulled back, the flat screw that's in the plate itself, and then the camera screw which is inserted up into the plate. Here's how the assembly motion works. You won't have that long camera screw attached to the plate, so take that off and line the plate up with the iPod head on the very outside. You'll see a round grip on the outside left hole. That's what you're going to use. Take the camera brass screw, and notice it has two heads. Take the bottom portion and push it up into the threading of the plate as far as you can, and then take the secondary head, which will travel up and down the screw itself, and tighten that as much as you can. Here's a second view of it. That's what will hold the plate in place so that it can't shift around on top of the tower head. Now over to the Pro head. Remember, this wheel and handle are on the left side. You'll need to put the plate onto the iPod head with the cables facing the right directions. The HDMI cable will need to be on the left side of the plate, and the Lite cable for zoom and record control will be on the right side. You'll see it has a yellow tag. Also, again, note the lever that will be in the back of the plate. You'll connect with one of the brass screws that's attached to the iPod head. Typically, you use the groove for the iPod head that's on the very outside of the head. This is a view of the bottom of the strain relief plate before setup. Note where the holes are being used and how the brass screw is going to connect. Now put the plate with cables on top of the iPod head and bring the brass screw up and into the threaded hole from the bottom of the iPod head. This will sandwich it together. There's a secondary screw which you'll then need to bring up after the primary screw has been connected as fully as possible. The secondary screw is what cinches the plate in place so it can't move afterwards. Just be aware there are two sections of this. The camera setup, as before, is the same for both units, but I'll show the physical differences. This is the camera that arrives with the iPod, and I'm going to point out some of the key features you should be aware of. We send it with a mounting pedestal pre-installed, which will attach to the quick release plate we just put onto the top of the iPod head. On the right in the hand strap, you will find a USB cable that not only powers the camera, but will send data to your computer when you're done. Under the hand strap, you will find a door that, if lifted, reveals a port called Multi. This is where the cable for the remote control will be plugged in. On the bottom of the camera, you'll find a plastic sliding piece that you can push off to reveal the battery inside. If you push the little blue tab that's shown on the top right, then you can remove the battery. The small battery inside the camera only lasts for 20 to 30 minutes, so in a moment I'll show you the large battery that will take over as the main power source. On the left side of the camera, the LCD window will be open to turn the camera on. It reveals a door which, when dropped down, shows the HDMI micro port and also the slot for your SD card. Be aware where these are, as we'll come back to them later. Now we're going to install the camera. As mentioned, the camera has an adapter on the bottom that's pre-attached. You're going to snap that into the plate that has the levers pulled back so that they're open. Just line up the adapter on the camera, push it, and it'll snap right into the assembly. If you want to take it out, pull the levers back, and the camera will pop out. Now over to the Pro head. Take the camera, have the lever open on the quick release, and snap into place. This connects the two pieces together. Now when it's time to take the camera off, simply open the lever again and the camera will come out. It's time to install the cables for the camera. Open the LCD window on the left and open the little door where you'll find HDMI micro and the SD card slot. Find the HDMI micro cable, line it up with the port, and plug it in. Then on the opposite side, under that little door, find the cable that has the yellow tag. That is your remote cable. Plug that into the multi-port. When you have your remote and camera connected via this cable, you'll have control over tight and wide zoom for the camera, and also the record start and stop. Here's a view of that remote cable from the opposite angle, and then the HDMI cable coming out of the left side. Now let's talk cable management for a moment. Once you have the cables connected to the camera, make sure you can turn that camera up, down, left, right from the head in all directions without the cables yanking or pulling at any point. The plates keep any tension at the cable tips or camera ports from occurring. You can see the plates limit the cable tugging from below the camera, not at the camera ports or cable tips. This is critically important to be aware of and maintain, as if the plates are not applied, you will break those cables and your camera won't work. Now, as a continuation of that thought, every tube stage has a piece of Velcro on it, and this helps to keep your video cables neat and out of the way. You can just open up the Velcro like this, put the cables inside, and then wrap the Velcro to close. It acts as a strain relief and keeps the cables from interacting with the handle ropes coming up from the control center on the unit. In the area of electronics, cable setup and maintenance is the most important part of HiPod operation. Now we will move on to the physical setup of the camera battery. You'll have all of these extra holes available to the right of the camera after it's set up. You'll take this camera battery with the metal adapter seen here. The style may change over time, but this is the general idea. Take that adapter and put it underneath of the head of the camera where it sits, and find the extra brass screw for the camera connection. You're basically going to do this in reverse from the camera. So from the top, put the screw in, line it up with the threading of the battery, and cinch it up to connect. Now over to the Pro head. There are two ways to do this, and I'll explain both approaches. For the first style, we're going to attach the battery directly to the camera plate from the bottom. To do so, take the brass screw, the second one that's on the head, and there's a third in your overall case for the tower, and then sandwich the battery to the plate so that it's hanging down from the bottom. This has the benefit of keeping all of the cables neat, which I'll show in a moment, but it does add a little bit more weight to the head. So depending on your preference, you might want to mount it here or to the spot we'll go over next. The cable you will use to connect the camera to the battery itself looks like this. It's a female USB to a male USB adapter. Find the small USB cord coming out of the camera from the hand strap and plug the female end of the adapter into that cable. Run the cable over to the battery using the male end of the USB to connect to the battery. You may need to click the battery to activate it and turn it on so it begins to provide power. Now, this next section is regarding cable management. You will have all of this extra slack with the battery adapter, and you're going to want to take that up and hold it inside of the camera's hand strap. Open up the Velcro, wind it up a few times, and then just Velcro it shut. This helps to keep the cables neat and out of the way so you won't have the cables catching at any point on the unit. More broadly, cable management is one of the most important parts of operating and owning a HiPod. Regardless of what cable system you're using, old SD cables, the current HDMIs, or something special, you need to make sure that the camera with the head on top can move in all directions without anything yanking or tugging at any point in the motion. This is critical to protecting your electronics long term. Here's the same attachment on the advanced head. It's best to mount that camera battery so that the USB ports are facing back towards the camera. That will make the cable connection much easier in the next step. Go ahead and find the cable which has a USB female on one end and USB male on the other end. This is what you use to connect the battery and the camera together. On the camera, inside the hand strap, you're going to find a small USB cable physically attached to the camera. That not only powers the camera, but also will send data to your computer when we're done. Take the cable with the USB female cable head and plug it into the camera as shown. And then on the other side, take the USB male end and plug that into your camera battery. That will start to supply power from that battery to your camera, although you may need to click the button physically on the battery itself to activate it. That varies sometimes depending on the exact model of the battery. Now, another note regarding cable management. Notice the hand strap. I'll show you where this comes into play in just a moment. You're going to have all of this extra cabling in that USB female to male cable that we just connected, and that's going to get in the way when the head starts moving. So bind it up like this, open up the Velcro that's in the hand strap, and then just take that cabling and then lock it down so that it won't get in the way of the head, the camera, the battery, or any of the cables as they move. That'll make everything much easier as you're shooting. Back down at the base, find the remote cable, which has a red cable head. Line it up with the port for the remote and plug it in. If you want, you can loop it around the arm for a little strain relief, but don't put any tension on the port. Here are some of the remote functions you should be aware of. On the top left, there is the power/record light, which will tell you that the remote itself has power. Just to the right of that is the camera power on and off button. On the second line down, we have the grid line on the left, and then there's this slider button, which is the lock button. If you push that down and see the red background, all of the functions of the camera will freeze up. Nothing will work. So here's a closer shot of that. When you see the gray background, that means the camera functions will be enabled. But again, if you ever see this with the red background exposed, nothing's gonna work. Okay, so that's that function. Now we go down to the two core buttons. You have the record start and stop button, and then you have the tight and wide toggle, which will control the zoom functions of the camera. Now I want to bring something regarding power consumption to your attention. Many operators think that by hitting the power button on the remote and turning the camera off, that they're conserving power for later use. The problem is, when you hit that button on the remote to turn the camera back on, you're drawing power from the small internal battery from the camera, which dies in 20 or 30 minutes, rather than the large external USB battery. So just leave the camera on. In standby mode, you have 10 hours of power in that external battery and 5 hours of hot record time in the battery. So just leave it on, you'll have a better result. The rain gear for the HiPod comes in 3 parts. This is the camera portion. You see the shield where the camera will look through when it's fully set up. At the bottom, you're gonna find this metal plate with a long groove cut out. This is how you connect it to the larger assembly. Here's the before shot of your camera setup as it is now without rain gear. You need to take note of where the head plate is, where your camera quick release and strain relief plates are on top. The rain gear goes in between that and you sandwich it together. So you have the camera head on the bottom, the rain gear with its long metal rod with the groove as mentioned earlier, and then the camera with its cables and those plates sit on top. Take the same brass screw, sandwich everything together, and it'll hold. Once this is all connected, take the rain gear and then cover all of the apparatus, cables, and everything that it's fully covered. Once this is done, make sure that you can move the camera up, down, left, right with no problem. There's a cinch at the very bottom of this long rain gear material. I leave that up to you based on how your movement of the head is. Over to the Pro head.
Now, when using the rain gear, it's best to mount the battery under the camera just for maximum coverage. To mount the rain gear for the camera, you'll put the plate on which that rain gear sits directly under the strain relief plate where you mounted the camera. Just sandwich them together and then insert the brass screw to hold them on. Pull the rain gear itself over the camera and cover everything until satisfied. Then cinch the cord up on the other side so that everything is tight and covered, no rain can get in. It'll look like this when you're done. The rain gear for the LCD is fairly self-explanatory. Just cover the screen and that will do the job. Same for the remote.
Here is the remote control portion of the rain gear. There's an opening that you can put your hand in if you want to control the remote from inside, or you can do it from outside the bag just on top, whatever works best. It connects with a strap of Velcro at the very top of the remote arm. Now it's time to put the tubes into the air. Every single tube stage has a collar and a cam lock with a piece of Velcro above. You will always open the cam lock below the tube section that you want to elevate. Open the lock, push the tube into the air, and then close the lever again to hold it in place. The collar will squeeze the tube. This is when you would use the Velcro to hold the cables against the tower so they stay organized and out of the way. When you're ready to compress the tower, always hold the tube above the collar and lever that you're about to unlock. If you simply open it, the tube will shoot down.
Now that the tower is set up, I'm going to go over some important things you should know about your camera. Now, if you want the camera's text and record data to show on the LCD while you're recording, follow these steps. From the default screen, hit the menu button and then select Camera Mic in the top middle. It'll bounce you into a scroll window and then look for Scene Selection. Your display will change to look like this. Then on the far right, you'll see an arrow on the bottom. Go ahead and click on that and leave your screen here. You'll see Standby, which turns into Record, and Battery Life. Each time you turn the camera on, you'll need to set this up. Now, to program your camera so it won't auto turn off after a few minutes, you'll do this. Go to Setup, and then scroll down until you see something that either says Power Save or Eco Mode, and then go ahead and click into that, and then turn Power Save or Eco Mode off. It varies based on which model you have. Also, if you see an option which says Demo Mode, you'll want to go into that and turn it off as well. Continuing with camera settings, this is something you're going to need to do at first time setup only. New cameras shipping in 2017 have an automatic dual video record setting activated in the camera. What this does is to record 2 files of the same clip in 2 different formats. What that does effectively is to take up twice as much memory in your SD card as it needs to. So to turn this off, this is what you need to do. Go to Menu, and then after that point, click on the top right icon that says Image Quality/Size. Then scroll down to where you find Dual Video Record option and make sure that option is turned off. That will save you this extra file space and allow you to record longer at a time. One final note for those of you who are using the USB power pack style camera battery, to confirm the correct battery is powering your camera, once you have text on screen set up as explained earlier in this manual, look at your screen, and if in the top right hand corner you see a battery icon, either dead or partly charged or anything at all that shows a battery, that means you're drawing power from the small internal battery in the camera. You need to click the external power pack battery on the side once connected for it to take over as the main battery for the camera. Otherwise, if you use the internal battery, that camera will die within 30 to 45 minutes. Once you have clicked the external battery and it is turned on, the battery icon on the LCD will disappear. This is what you want, and it confirms the larger battery is active as the power source for the camera. When it's time to put your tower away, here's a quick tip. When you want to fold the legs, always pull up on the top portion of the legs and push your foot down on one of the black slats so that they compress in. That's going to allow the legs to collapse easily. And that's it.